Good evening, everyone. Welcome into overtime as we're going to rehash week number 2 of high school games right here in the Midlands. Of course, and we'll preview the upcoming games in week number 3 as well. Hope you're having a wonderful night, and we're here just to make it a little bit better. Alongside my partner and cohort, Jim Baxter. I love the shirt, man.
Like that.
Can I get away with the?
You could probably pass on.
I got the purple rain shirt on, and you got the. Is that pink?
I think it's shell. We'll call it shell.
We'll call it shell for now. But week number 2, nonetheless, did not disappoint us at all. Of course, our game of the week, Blythewood and Lexington. I'm going to say I was wrong. I took Blythewood. I went with the heart. I went with Israel, and Israel couldn't get it in the end zone. And Lexington was very, very tough. Great defense, by the way. It's one of those games that a guy like me, I like, Jim, because I'm a defensive player. And it was one of those defensive ball games. It was a very defensive ball game, and the offenses really were not very good in that game. Fourth quarter, before we had any scoring. And I tell you, Blythewood, I mentioned last week that they had some struggles. They were going to face some struggles, and they really needed to get better. But this team really had a difficult time protecting David Israel. We had one player for Lexington wound up with 5 sacks in the game, and David Israel was running for his life. I have yet to see in any of the games this year David be able to stand in the pocket and throw the football. Yeah. He's been on the run the whole season. Well, Slade Carroll had 2 touchdowns, and he didn't disappoint. What you can see there, there was turnovers in this ball game. Blythewood getting one right there. You can see Coach Morgan trying to instruct this team. They're going to try what we call a trickeration. Fake punt right there, but he what they call coughed it up, Jim. Yeah, and that was one of the problems. I mean, turning the ball over, just not unable to move the football. And Slade Carroll, you mentioned Slade Carroll with 2 touchdowns. He had both scores, but he also had 188 yards. I think he netted 188 on the ground, and he's a workhorse. And we talked about him 2 weeks ago when they went up to West Side, being the guy. And I said last week, Lexington was going to feed Slade Carroll the football, and they did it. You said it. You've been very accurate. Of course, you've been accurate about something else. We'll bring that up in just a moment. But when you talk about Blythewood, a couple of guys that we've made mention of, Belton and some of the others, thought they had a better defense than what we, Well, they actually did play pretty well on defense. They only gave up 13 points to Lexington. Yeah, but Dominique Lemon did a really good job of shutting down Jason Hopper, Lexington's big receiver. Hopper was not an impact player in that game. And I think Hassan Belton wound up with 25 tackles. Right. But you can't do it by yourself. That's true. And, their offense pretty much left them on the field the whole game because they couldn't get first downs. So there wasn't no pout, as Dabo Swinney had said with this team. We know the offense is coming off the field. Just saying. Let's go to another game, another big game here in the Midlands. Brooklyn-Casey, who I must say, all you folks over in West Columbia, the Casey area, thumbs up because they continue to get it done, beating a very good 2A team in Batesburg, Leesville. Yeah, they had a good game against Batesburg in terms of the win-loss. But this team, and I said it last week, they've got to get better on the offensive side of the football. And one of the things that I see with this team, Corey, you look at the game against Batesburg, they scored 22 points, beat them 22-14. Only offense scored once. They scored once on special teams. Their defense was able to get a score. So they had 3 missed opportunities inside the red zone. One was an interception. I think the other one was a turnover, and then they just failed to convert. So you're looking at 3 other scoring opportunities they didn't get. And, again, offense scoring one time for them. They've got to get better on the offensive side of the football. Got to get better on quarterback play, and they've got to be able to move the football on offense if they're going to compete in that lower state 3A in the playoffs. Yeah, well, I still like this team. One of my favorite, one of the biggest surprises for me, at least, in the Midlands. But I like what Coach Sharp is doing with this football team. They were down for a long time. They beat a very good Fairfield Central team who really don't lose that much. You beat your rival in Airport, and then you go down and take care of Batesburg. I mean, you got to give them some credit. Oh, I give them credit. I've got them at number 4 in my Midlands top 5, and I give them plenty of credit. I'm just saying they've got some things they need to work on if they want to be a contender. Lower state 3A is tough. You got Hartsville down there, Marlboro County, Myrtle Beach, the defending state champions. There's a lot of tough teams in lower state 3A. And Brooklyn-Casey, if they're going to compete in those playoffs in postseason, they've got to get better on the offensive side of football. Well, you just mentioned where do you have BC in your top 5. Let's take a look at Jim's top 5 and see if, in fact, they've changed just a little bit, Jim. I know you kind of move things around in your little top 5.
Yeah.
Notice I said you're a little top five.
Well, we still got Dutch Fork at number 1, despite
shocking.
despite the loss out there this week. Westwood at number 2. Westwood had another good win and big game this week. AC Flora still at 3rd. Brooklyn Casey still at number 4.
Mm-hmm.
We had a change at number 5. Batesburg-Leesville was at number 5. They faced off with Brooklyn Casey last week. Batesburg-Leesville just did not look very good. They were missing Terrence Wilson, the running back, and I can tell you, without him, Batesburg is not the same football team. We moved Sumter up. Sumter's had a good season so far. I mean, they lost coming out of the gates at York late in the game. York came back and beat them, but they rattled off 2 wins, and quality wins at that. They beat Stratford last week.
Yeah.
And so that's a good win for Sumter. I think the Sumter team is going to end up being better than they were last year.
Well, didn't the Sumter team of last year beat Stratford in the playoffs?
Beat them in the playoffs,
Right.
and of course, you know, they went on to the 4A Division
game.
I
Right.
championship game where I don't think they were quite ready to face a
No,
Dutch Fork.
that should have been another team there.
But, you know, they were an opportunistic team last year. I think that was the reason they got to the state championship, because they had the ball bounce their ways, they had some interceptions, and they really had a favorable bracket.
Right.
This team is different. This team is actually very talented. Not that last year's wasn't, but I think this team can get there on their play, not having to get opportunities, and I think this team's going to be better than last year's team.
Well, I can tell you, Coach Reggie Kennedy told me numerous times, and Coach Walt Wilson, that this team has a lot of talent. Last year they were young in a lot of positions, but those guys are going to be very good. So I'm not shocked that you got Sumter where they are, but they're not in my top 5, not just yet. But we'll talk about the game to watch coming up after the break. Yes, Spring Valley, you're on the docket. Richland Northeast, you're on the docket, because that's a big rivalry right here in the Millers. Jim and I are going to break that down just after this break. All right, welcome back to Overtime. Corey Miller, the pastor of Payne, here with you alongside Jim Baxter of scvarsity.com, and we're talking about our game to watch. We're going to take our talents over to the Northeast this weekend and talk about Spring Valley with their new coach, Dr. Jerry Brown and Jay Fry. With Richland Northeast was a 4A school, dropped down a notch to 3A, but has some struggles thus far in the season. Spring Valley sits at 1-1, beat Lower Richland and lost to Lawrence a couple of weeks ago. Of course, they was off this past week. But, Jim, as we look at this matchup, it is one of those games that used to be one of the biggest rivalries. I mean, I remember sitting in the stands when my oldest son, CJ, played with Christian. I mean, they get amped up about this ball game, but Coach Fry has had some problems. And Northeast has had a lot of talent over the past. But I've seen a drop-off the last few years with Northeast.
Well, I think a lot of people don't understand that attrition has a lot to do with that. I mean, back years ago, Richland Northeast used to get a lot of kids from military parents that would move in at Fort Jackson. Those parents are moving, they're not staying on base anymore. They're moving out. Right. And so they lose those kids. So attrition's hurt Richland Northeast, and now you see them dropping down to 3A. This will be a good game. Of course, they don't like each other. It's a rival game. Richland Northeast is a spawn off of Spring Valley from back in the day. So it's going to be an interesting game. But I think Spring Valley's probably got the edge in it, but Spring Valley's a team that's got their own problems.
Yeah, they do have some problems. Of course, you can see right there last week, Northeast played Lancaster, and of course lost that ball game and really wasn't too close. But this is a team that they're going to fight hard under Coach Fry. Now, Spring Valley, as you can see right there, they're 1-1. Of course, I was part of that team last year with my son, undefeated in the regular season. A lot of folks was wondering about Spring Valley, Jim, because you lost to Christian Miller, you lost John Miller. You lost John at the linebacker position. So Hartland.
Josh
you lost a lot of good Josh Hartland. So you lost a lot of good football players, but they've been battling the first couple of games.
They've done well defensively. You know, they're doing pretty good. I mean, their defense is really good. You know, you got Jalen Williams, you got his brother Jordan Williams, both outstanding players. Tyler Frazier, a safety. They're all playing good football, and you know, I think it's going to be a good game, a good matchup with the defenses. I think Richland Northeast has got a pretty good defense. You know, they returned all 4 starting linebackers from last year. T.J. Brunson leading that pack, and so they're good in the middle of their defense. Of course, they returned their leading scorer from last year, quarterback Simeon Kelly. So I think it's going to be an interesting matchup, especially in where Spring Valley's at right now with their own struggles.
Yeah, Spring Valley, because you mentioned Jordan and Jalen Williams, very good players. I've coached at least Jordan since he was in the Pop One League over with David Israel. Those guys. I've known the talent. The talent that he has had for a long time. But Jordan's brother, big guy, 230 pounds, could be a very good football player that's going to need to be developed. So I like Spring Valley on defense. Hopefully they can, and I'm a little biased, I must say a little bit. I mean, I am a little bit, but I think if they play good defense, they should win this ball game. But we did catch up with Coach Fry, who's I talked about with Northeast, struggling a little bit, but he is optimistic about his football team. Here's what the coach said earlier today.
Well, we feel like we've had a good week of practice. My guys are, still working extremely hard. Although our record isn't real good, we still got a lot of youth. But we got some seniors that are really taking charge and doing some good things for us. And I don't know if there's one specific strength. We feel like our defense has played hard and giving us a chance. Now, like I said, we got to put some points on the board.
They will have to put some points on the board, that's for sure. Going to be tough. We're talking about those Williams brothers, and of course, you mentioned Frazier, who played safety for us last year, has sometimes moves up the line of scrimmage, is good in the box. So it's going to be a good ball game. And you mentioned there's a lot of emotion tied to this football game, which it could go either way. I mean, I'm not overly thrilled with Spring Valley when the first couple of weeks. They have struggled, Jim, and this could go either way. You never know.
I told you off the air we were talking about it.
Right.
I think the wheels on the Spring Valley bus, all the lug nuts are off, and the wheels are doing this right now, and they're just waiting to come off. I'm waiting for that to happen, but they've got some things they got to work on to get this team better.
One of the positions, I mentioned, Josh and Christian and John, those guys of last year, but one of the unsung heroes of that football team was Chris. He played quarterback for us, and Chris made that option work. And talk about what you've known about the quarterback position at Spring Valley.
Well, they originally had 3 guys that were rotating through the position. Of course, one of them played A-back last year for him. He wasn't a quarterback. Very athletic, but right now I just don't think that they've got the guy to play quarterback. And the problem is the guy they got playing quarterback really needs to be playing A-back in that offense. Right. They got a good fullback, in the B-back, and they call it in that offense. And I think they'll do a good job. I think the problem with Spring Valley's offense, and I really believe that they are just failing to diversify the offense. I think that last year they did a good job, even though they ran the flex bone, they did a good job of opening up the passing game and using their receivers and letting the quarterback throw the ball down the field, giving them another dimension of the offense. This offense that I've seen with Spring Valley so far this year is a run offense. When they did try to throw it last week, they threw interceptions because they're not doing it at practice and they're not doing it in the games. And I think they've got to diversify this offense if they're going to get better.
No doubt. You heard it from the expert. We will be watching that game, 7:30 Friday night, if the weather permits. We'll hear from our chief meteorologist, Henry Rothenberg, and let you know about that game later on in the program. But when we come back, it's time to celebrate those cheerleaders and the band, and yes, our player of the week. That's coming up after this break. Welcome back to Overtime. It's now time for us to celebrate. We love to do this. The band, because I love the sounds. They just bring joy to all of our hearts. We're sitting in the stands, you're on the sideline. That band of the week is Batesburg Leesville. The sounds of Batesburg. These folks are getting it done. And, of course, we want to celebrate you on this Thursday night because you just does such a great job with your sound. So, Batesburg Leesville, can we get some sound, my man Vinny, from the band? Of course, you can hear that sound, and they're trying to raise some money to take a trip to London. If you need somebody to go with you, Batesburg band, take the pastor of pain. Our cheerleaders of the week, of course, we're going to go out to Airport High School, and they had them fired up out there. Even their future's so bright. One girl said she had to wear some shades, Jim. So they are our cheerleaders group of the week, and we appreciate all.
And they had something to celebrate.
Yeah, they did.
The airport, of course, beat Drew last week.
Yeah, big win for them, and it's a really good football game. And so we appreciate the girls energizing the guys, getting them fired up, ready to play some football. Well, our players to watch and our players of the week, we got 2 of them this week. It was some tough choices. Matt Colburn up at Allen, Texas. Yeah, he got it done on the ground, 25 carries, 250 yards, 3 touchdowns. Yes, out of the backfield as well, 78-yard reception for 1 touchdown, a total of 4 touchdowns against one of the best teams in the country. Of course, our own Jim Baxter said last week, he's not surprised because they really didn't play much defense in Allen, Texas. 58-53, Dutch Fork lost that ball game. They left all the defense at home. Our other player is Trey Mitchell of Lexington. Of course, we showed you Blythewood and Lexington. You can see right here the little triggeration. Looked good for a moment, but wait a minute. Coughed it up, and there he is right there, Trey Mitchell.
Number 2.
Number 2. He's hyped up, Jim.
He is. He's an outstanding player. You know, I tell you what,
Hustle player. Look at that.
Junior, big kid, 6'1", about 210. Had a great game against Blythewood.
Yeah, 3 sacks, 13 tackles.
13 tackles and 3 sacks. Had 2 tackles for loss and interception. Yeah. So outstanding player. One of the other players that I wanted to kind of mention this week that people ought to keep an eye on, and he's kind of overlooked because of the big names on the team, but Mick Lusk, linebacker over at Dutch Fork, outstanding player. He is a blue-collar, hard-hitting, just hard-nosed linebacker for Dutch Fork. He's not 5'1" though. He's about 5'10", 205 pounds. But
they were missing a 0.
He's outstanding player for Dutch Fork and really a force in the middle of that defense. You always hear about Stephen Davis and Matt Colburn and Lane Ecton on the defensive side of the football over there, but Lusk is an important player to him.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So we like to watch recruits every week because this is what he does. Of course, scvarsity.com. Hit that website up, especially players in the Millers throughout the state, throughout the country. This guy got all the information that you need on that website, scvarsity.com. All right, when we come back, we're going to turn our attention to another game. Of course, we mentioned Dutch Fork, Matt Colburn, they're in Allen, Texas. Well, they back home to South Kakalaki, as they say, and they playing another top team in the state of South Carolina. Do you remember the name? Thompson was brother, starting quarterback for the Gamecocks. His little brother, quarterbacks, Boiling Springs, Dutch Fork and Boiling Springs. We're going to highlight that game. We'll get it looked at for you. And the weather, our very own Henry Rothenberg coming up after this break, because you might want to pay attention to the weather. You might need to take an umbrella to the ball game on Friday night. Just saying. That's coming up after the break. Welcome back to Overtime, and we like to keep you informed what the weather's going to be like on tomorrow night, whether you need to take a big bucket hat for the sunshine in the afternoon, right, or an umbrella. You might need that tomorrow. Our Chief Meteorologist, Henry Rothenberg, Mr. Pretty, as I call him. Take it away.
Well, I'll tell you, Corey, tomorrow's looking interesting. In fact, as far as outdoor watch goes for Friday evening, I'm only giving it a 3. Poor conditions because of showers and storms. Cloudy. It will also be muggy outside. Let's show you future watch starting it at 6. We're going to pause it at 7. We're looking at scattered showers and thunderstorms. The key there, the storm factor because of lightning. Still with us by 8 and 9 o'clock, and as we continue to roll, by the time some of these games would be wrapping up, we're still looking at the potential for these storms. In fact, as our severe threats go for tomorrow, I'm concerned for some windy conditions, some heavy rain, but my biggest concern is lightning, and this could create some lightning delays at some of these games. In fact, our game to watch tomorrow, Richland Northeast at Spring Valley. The chance of thunderstorms there, that's something we're keeping a watchful eye on. That's a 7:30 kickoff, a temperature around 81 degrees then. But again, the thunderstorm threat, Corey, that is my biggest concern. It's a good time to remind folks, download that free Skywatch weather app because you can not only track the storms, you'll know where lightning is and if there's any type of warning. So we want folks to be safe tomorrow, but again, you need to stay tuned to the weather because thunderstorms could cause some problems for those games tomorrow, Corey.
All right, that's our Chief, Henry Rothenberg. Of course, that app is crucial. You need that on your phone so you know what's going on with the weather. Could be some lightning out there, as he said. So be very careful because a lot of folks, not a lot, but some people play tonight just because of the weather. Another game to watch, Jim, and probably could be one of our games to watch every week when Dutch Fork plays because they're so good and so many good football players. But Boiling Springs is a good football team from the upstate playing Dutch Fork. And Dutch Fork's schedule hasn't been easy. And I know a lot of folks are excited about the Allen, Texas loss. I mean, is that like one of those that folks kind of like Steve Spurrier said, don't applaud me for being close. But a lot of fans seems like happy that they were close to this Texas team, who's one of the best teams in the country.
Well, you know, a lot of people are saying that because everybody's saying Allen, Texas was the #1 team in the country, and they could beat. I've heard people say they could beat anybody in South Carolina. So for Dutch Fork to play like they did, it's good. What I know about Allen, Texas, is that they've given up 97 points in 2 games.
Right.
What I also know is that Dutch Fork scored 53 points and lost.
Right.
So we don't really know a lot from that game.
Right.
They're going to play a Bowling Springs team this week, and Bowling Springs pretty good. Daniel Thompson, Dylan Thompson's younger brother, as you've already mentioned, one of the best quarterbacks. I think he's the best quarterback in the state in the senior class. Has thrown 9 touchdowns already. Threw for 363 yards last week against Gaffney. This team gave Gaffney just 13 points last week. So this is not a cupcake that they're playing this week. This is a pretty good football team. And I was reading some comments from the Coach Tate for Bowling Springs in the paper, and they go upstate, and they expect to win this game. They're going into this game thinking they're going to win. Daniel Thompson's actually said they play every game like it's a state championship. And regardless of win or lose, they'll come back Monday and they'll start working for their next state championship. And so this is a team that's poised and ready.
Well, you think about Daniel, of course, his brother Dylan plays quarterback here in South Carolina. When you talk about leadership, you talk about gutsy and just laying on the line, I'm sure, you know, the apple don't fall far from the tree. You know, he possessed some of those similar skill sets and mentality, and he plays like it. When you watch his film, he's a tough kid.
Yeah.
I've seen him around at some recruiting arenas, even last year. Some folks looking at him, good-looking kid, smart kid. But the concern for me with Dutch Fork in this ball game is their defense, because last week they gave up 58 points. And I know Calamari is a good quarterback going to Texas A&M, but, man, he had over 500 yards total offense.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about what Thompson has done, you got to be a little bit concerned if you're Dutch Fork, because the defense is the issue. Of course, Matt Coleman's going to do his thing, but the defense, Jim, in about 20 seconds is going to be the issue.
Yeah, I think the big thing is that Dutch Fork, Bowling Springs needs to not go in there trying to stop Matt Colburn. They're not going to stop Matt Colburn. They need to limit the damage that he does.
Right.
And I think if they can do that, this will be a pretty good football game.
It should be a really good football game. Of course, hopefully the weather permits. As you heard Henry Rothenberg tell you, there's a chance of some high winds and some thunderstorms and lightning out there. So, again, download that app and keep yourself updated on what's going on with the weather. So make sure you're safe out there. Enjoy tomorrow night. It's going to be some good games throughout the Midlands. Of course, we're going to keep you updated. All right? So we'll see you next week. Same time, same place, right here in the Overtime.